Good morning, everybody. Really excited. This is a small session, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to get into some stuff today. But as Mary mentioned and Brock mentioned, my name's Mitch. I'm an account executive here at Klaviyo. I've been at the company for about 2.5 years, so seen the products grow and evolve, especially the flows themselves, and really enjoy helping to move customers over to Klaviyo. So I do a lot of the onboarding process and helping them get set up, with Klaviyo for the first time. So with today's session, the ultimate clicker. We're hopefully going to walk away from this session here today, leaving you guys feeling confident enough to set a flow live by the end of this session. How many of you here have had an opportunity to build a flow within Klaviyo before? A couple of you? Okay. So what we're going to do is we'll go through the different pieces and parts of Klaviyo. So first we're going to talk a little bit about the value of a flow and why they're important, and why you should be using them for your business. Second, we're actually going to walk through the anatomy. So what are the building blocks of a flow, the different pieces and parts from a fundamental standpoint. Then we're going to get into actually how to tailor the journey that someone goes through within the flow. So how can we personalize that experience for your customers? We're also going to talk about a few things to be mindful of within the flow builder. And then we'll get into actually building out some flows towards the end of this session, and some questions that any of you guys may have as well. So why do we build a flow? There's a few different reasons, and we want to start out with what is a flow. And a flow in its core is an automated email or a series of emails that is set in motion by a single trigger and optionally filtered based on a specific profile or trigger details. Now that's a lot of words to say, someone takes an action I want to send, I want to do something. Right? So a flow at its core is reactionary. It's basically saying someone's taken an action and I want to do something about that. There's a few different reasons that we want to do this for our business. First and foremost is we want to initiate, nurture, and maintain relationships with both our customers and subscribers over the course of their life cycle. So is this their first touch point with your brand? Is this the first time they're finding out about who you are? Is it the second, third? Is this, they've been a customer for a few years at this point? How can we push them through all the different points of that life cycle? That's what flows are going to help you do. Second is we want to use automation to help scale the number of personalized touch points that you have with your subscriber base. So most companies that I've talked to, when they start out, they really enjoy the fact that they can kind of get one-on-one with their customers, have a chance to talk and really get in depth with how they interact with the brand. That can be really hard to do as you scale the business, especially in e-commerce. If you start to get thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers, it's really hard to do that at scale. That's what flows are going to help you do. Going to help you, as Andrew mentioned, really make things personal as you grow. Third and final, I know Jake alluded to this in the keynote a couple minutes ago here, make money while you sleep. So when your head hits the pillow at night, know that these touch points are going out, know that you're making money, and you don't have to walk into a whole bunch of stuff on Monday morning every day. Mary's going to walk through the anatomy of a flow and actually talk through the building blocks that you'll go through.
So there are a few basic components of a flow that you're always going to encounter, but before I go through those, we just wanted to give you a quick preview of the visual flow builder itself. So I mentioned I may use some terminology such as drag and drop, drag and block in, things like that, and we just wanted to let you know and give you the visual that our visual flow builder is a drag and drop builder to make it easy for you to build out your flow and also to see the journey your customer is going to be going through. So the building blocks of a flow, there's 3 key blocks that you're going to encounter with every flow you're going to build out. The first is a trigger. So what's actually going to initiate a person being cued into that flow to receive the communication and start that relationship with you and your brand. The next is a time delay. A time delay is just how long do you want to wait before you start that communication. And lastly is the action. So what are you actually going to say and start with that profile that cued and triggered that flow. So starting with a trigger event in definition is just a catalyst event or activity that sets the flow in motion. It's just the action that a person took that led you to start this communication. So in Klaviyo, you have 4 options to choose from. So the first 2 we're going to kind of group together because they're very similar in that both a list and a segment triggered flow is just a profile being added to another group of profiles. However, the difference between this is a list is a static group of profiles. So for example, your newsletter list and your welcome flow, that's just the static group of subscribers that you've obtained that profile is being added to. And so you'll trigger a welcome flow to say, welcome, thank you for opting in, here's a discount, here's a little bit about us, etc. The segment is a little bit different. So a segment triggered flow is when someone meets a set definition that you've set for them. And this is for an example to kind of put this into real life is, let's say you wanted to start communication with someone you've defined as unengaged. Well, how would you define someone that you think is unengaged? And you'd set those definitions so when someone meets those definitions, they would trigger that flow and they'd receive an email. The third type of option is a metric or an action trigger flow. These are the most common. This is when someone places an order, views a product, starts a checkout, things like that that you'd want to trigger communication with them to start seeing, they're interacting with your store, you want to start talking to them. The last is a date-based property. This is a little bit different from the rest in the sense that it acts a bit more like a countdown. And to use a date-based property, you need to have a date about someone in date-based format for this to work. So a great example of this is a birth date. Let's say when someone opts into your newsletter list, you also ask for their date of birth. And so this will actually allow you to trigger a flow that will send out before or on their birthday to say, hey, happy birthday, here's a coupon for your birthday month, or just for today, or just simply say happy birthday, we wanted to let you know we're thinking of you. The next element of a flow is the time delay. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's just the time that you're going to wait before sending out that first or second or third flow message that you want to the recipient to receive. And in Klaviyo, there's a few options here that you can do. So in Klaviyo, you can wait a number of days, hours, minutes, and in addition to that, you can actually schedule the time you want that to send out on that day. And you can do this by a specific time zone, so for example, 10 a.m. Eastern time, or you can actually check a box that says, or not check a box, this is a selection in the drop-down, that says by a recipient's local time zone. So it'll actually send out 10 a.m. based on where you know that recipient lives. And then lastly, you have the option to check off what day of the week you want to wait for this flow to go out. A great use case scenario is, say you're targeting teachers. You might want to uncheck Saturday and Sunday because they might not be at their computers those days. So lastly is the action. So what's that actual email or response that you're going to send out to that recipient? And in Klaviyo, there are two options. The first, the most common, obviously, the email. But the second's a little bit more unique to Klaviyo, and it's the update profile property action. Has anyone ever used this before or seen this before? Well, this acts as a tag, in a sense. So you drag this block into your flow, and as a profile gets queued and travels through this flow, this action will actually tag that profile with something you want to make note about them. So in a sense, it's almost an internal survey someone's taking without even knowing. So one case scenario or one example would be first date of purchase. So if you want to actually mark that first date a person made their first time purchase with you, you could drag in a block that would mark that date underneath purchase equals today and then filter it so that it's their first time purchase. And now you forever have that initial date that you can then send them an anniversary flow with. Or you can use that date-based trigger to actually, continue the communication to say, hey, we remember this is the first time you made a purchase with us. We'd love to keep talking and say thank you. So in summary, the three key building blocks of the flow are the trigger, the time delay, and then the response. What are you going to either say to the customer, or in Klaviyo's other option, or the internal tag that you're going to keep and use as a marketer later on for segmentation and targeting purposes. So I'm now going to pass it over to Mitch, who's going to talk a little bit more about how you can cater that journey and get a little bit more granular versus just basics.
Cool. So now we know the pieces and parts. So we know what we need to have a flow, and a flow can exist with those three parts, with that trigger, the time delay, and some form of an action. But when that happens, we don't want everything to go to everyone, right? That's the whole point of Klaviyo. The whole point is that you have access to all of your data to personalize those touch points that you send out. So how can we do that within the Klaviyo Flow Builder? There's two different ways. There's a filter and a split. Now a filter is how you exclude someone who should not enter, no longer be in, or no longer receive a particular action within a flow. It's a little kludgy, I know, but think of it like a sieve. You're at the beach, you're looking for seashells, sea glass, something like that. Take a sieve, start to pull all the sand out, and you start to keep the good stuff that you want. It's essentially narrowing the audience and narrowing the scope that this particular flow is going to go out to. A split, however, is where we're going to start to customize the journey and change someone's experience based on information that we know about them or actions and behaviors that they take along the way. So this is saying once they're in the flow, how can we then change the path that they go down accordingly? So if we look at the different types of filters, we'll find that there's three main types of filters within Klaviyo. We have what are called trigger filters, and those are pretty much grab only certain events based on the triggering metric. So an example of that could be when I place an order, and say I place an order for this jacket here. There's specific information about this jacket that I'm going to buy. It's going to be how much did it cost, what collection was it, what was category, what was the color, what was the size. That's information about that specific triggering metric. If we look at a flow filter, that's going to pull any information from the profile. And so we've alluded to a few times here, Klaviyo is a profile-based system, which means on that profile we track all of the customer data. This is where we can reference any of the data on that profile to personalize that experience. An email filter is a little bit more specific. An email filter looks at a specific email within a flow and allows you to apply a filter to that specific email. So if we start here with the different types of filters, two of them we'll find right within the triggering metric. So to find a flow filter or a trigger filter, if we click on the trigger block, we'll see it show up on the left-hand side here. And if we take a look at a trigger event, for example, remember this is only filtering properties based on the trigger. What was the size, the price, category of that particular item, for example. Great opportunity that we can use here is getting into that type of information there. So an example of this could be, maybe I buy this jacket, right? And the value of this jacket is greater than $100. Maybe I want to treat me a little bit differently. Maybe I want to send me a discount because I purchased over $100. Maybe I want to offer a particular incentive, offer me to join a particular group or something like that. Based on that information about what I purchased and what I did, we're narrowing who's getting this particular messaging here. If we look at a conditional split, which we'll find, a flow filter here, this is again looking at any information that exists across the profile. It's really important to note that a flow filter is checked every time that an email goes to send. There's a reason that we structure it this way. So if you think about a flow filter, think of that as a global filter for the flow. And a great example of this could be for an abandoned cart. We want to put a flow filter on here that says only want people to go through this flow if they've placed an order 0 times since starting this flow. The nature of an abandoned cart is that they haven't bought yet. So if they buy, we want to make sure they get pulled out. And with the flow filter, that gets checked every email that goes to send. So say you have 5 emails in your abandoned cart sequence. We want to make sure that every time we go to send an email that they haven't bought yet. And that's how this flow filter works. It's going to check every time that email goes to send. If we take a look at an additional filter, an email filter within Klaviyo, again, that's narrowing the scope for a particular email within a flow. We're going to find this by clicking on the actual email itself, and we'll find on the left-hand side here this additional filter. A really great example of a reason that you would do something like this is think about your welcome series. Maybe at the very end of your welcome series, you want to include a discount. But if someone's bought from you before, we don't want to give them a discount because we know that they're signing up for your newsletter, they're already a customer, maybe they've already bought from you before, they're going to pay, maybe they'll pay full price or they're getting other sequences that are important. I could put a filter on this email that says they placed an order 0 times over all time. This means that only people that are going through this flow and have never purchased before are going to get that discount. Again, you're starting to tailor this experience and really hit those people with the specific message that's going to matter. If we get into splits, the 2 types of splits that we have are the conditional split. If you think of that similar to a flow filter, it's allowing you to pull any information from that profile and tailor the journey accordingly. We also have a trigger split. Same deal, right? What's the color of my jacket? What's the size? How much did I spend on it? It's pulling from that specific triggering metric. So we can find these splits within the flow builder under this logic section here. All we have to do is just drag it into the particular place within the flow that we want. So if we take a look at a conditional split, a good example of this could be, maybe I'm doing a customer thank you. And I know Jake alluded to this in the other presentation this morning. What if we want to do a customer thank you? If someone's purchasing from the very first time, right, it's statistically proven that as a business, that first purchase, you're either going to maybe break even, maybe even lose a little bit of money from a customer acquisition cost standpoint. So it's really important that we want to get them to become a repeat customer. So how do I want to tailor my message a little bit differently to that person? Maybe I want to offer an incentive. Maybe I want to offer something special, a personal note to that person, to really introduce them into the brand, to get them to become a repeat customer, which is where you as a business really start to make the profits on that person. Or someone that's coming through as a repeat customer, how can we then drive other value points from that person? Do we drive reviews? Do we try and get a testimonial? Right? Do we try and get them to follow us on Facebook and build that social proof? So there's different messages that we're going to want to send to different people based on how they've interacted with my brand in the past. If we look at a trigger split, again, this is getting into the nitty-gritty of that particular triggering event. And so a similar example, as Jake mentioned here, what's really interesting is how can we do a high value versus a low value card, right? If someone's going to go spend over $100 with my brands, maybe that's going to be particularly valuable to me, and it's more important that I reclaim that brand. Maybe I want to throw a really personal touch on that email. Maybe I want to give them a phone number to call, a specific email for them to reach out to. But maybe I don't want everyone to do that, right? If someone's going to go spend $5 with me, I maybe don't want them to call me on my cell phone and say, hey, I'm just going to spend $5, like, can you help me out, right? So we want to put people through a little bit more of a self-serve experience on that side of the world. Could also do that with discounts, right? Maybe you just can't afford the margins on a higher level purchase to discount, so we do no discount, right? Or we can afford the margins on a different piece. You can start to play around with how all that works out, again, based on that triggering metric there. So at the end of the day, there's two ways to start to tailor the experience for your customers and the journeys that they go through the filters to narrow the scope of who receives those emails, and then also splitting to change the experience that they have once they've already been triggered for a particular email. Hand it back to Mary for a couple things to be mindful of.
Thanks. So as a customer success manager, I get a lot of questions about the visual flow builder, especially as we start to dive into it for the first time. We wanted to just highlight a few key areas that we thought everyone here should know to just be mindful of when you build out the flows, trigger flows. So the four things we highlighted are send status, flow modes, viewing analytics, and smart sending. And I'll get into these in more detail as we move forward. So send status. Send status is just simply knowing, is your flow sending or is your email sending? And it's key to note that just because you drag an email block into your flow does not mean it's sending out. And the way you can tell is if it's in draft mode. And draft mode is going to be indicated by that little gray dot in the bottom left corner of each email. And draft mode is simply for the purpose of it's a draft. It's an edit. You're not ready to turn it live or have anyone see it yet. You're still working. The next mode you could potentially have it in is manual mode. And manual mode is a really great tool to use to see if your filters are working the way you want them to. And so the way manual mode acts is it's going to queue someone into your flow and treat it just like your flow is live, except when it comes to send time, it's not going to send to them. It's going to move them into a review mode or into a review area. So you can actually click in to see the profiles that should have gotten this email, just to check, okay, are my filters working? Should my profile have actually received this if this were in live mode? It's just a really great testing tool to use before you set this live and it's going out to real customers in real time. Last is live mode. Live mode means you've created it, you love how it looks, you've tested the filters, you know it's going to send who you want it to send. So you're ready to set it live, have it run automatically, and essentially make money while you sleep. So you set it live, you've tested it, you're ready, you're totally on board with how your flow is set up. How do you see how it's performing now that it's been running for a little bit? And that's how we're going to go through and show how your analytics are looking. And there's two ways you can do this. The first way is you can actually click this hyperlink on a specific email card. So you highlight the card that you're looking to learn more about, and then you'd see view all analytics right there in that hyperlink within the flow settings. And that's going to take you to a separate reporting page that's going to get you really in-depth analytics about how that flow is performing. So for the purpose of our presentation today, we're going to talk about the other option to view your analytics, and this is a little bit more at a higher level. And so this is a toggle button in the top right corner of the visual flow builder, and that's going to show or hide these analytics. And this is a really great way to just kind of go into each flow, see your analytics, and just check, okay, how's my open rate, place order, click-through rate doing? Which card is performing better? Is there a reason for that? Maybe that's going to, incentivize me to kind of click into that specific card to see what am I doing well, what am I not doing well, and just kind of work on tailoring your flow to improve it a little bit more. The next thing to keep in mind, and this is also shown at the high level view all analytics, are the flow modes. And this just is showing you where profiles are on that specific email card. So waiting just means that scheduled time that you've set to wait before they receive that email hasn't passed yet. So they're still waiting, their scheduled time hasn't come yet, so they're not going to receive that email until their scheduled flight time is hit. Review goes back to that manual mode. Review just means that your flow either is in or was previously in manual mode, and these are the profiles that went through and moved to the review mode so that you could go in and click send all, and you can manually review to send to them or check if they're the profiles that should have received this flow. Delivered just means these emails were delivered. That's the number of recipients that have so far received it. And skipped is another area to be mindful of. there's two main reasons why your emails have been skipped. There's a variety of reasons that can happen, but the two most common. The first is they simply failed the filters. They didn't need to receive that abandoned cart email because they already placed it. However, the second reason is a little bit more trickier, and it's a little bit more unique to Klaviyo, and it's called smart sending. And smart sending is just a tool Klaviyo uses to prevent email fatigue. And basically, this prevents you from sending way too many emails to one specific recipient that you might not be keeping track of. So it prevents you from sending too many emails within a certain time period. Of course, you as marketers always have the option to turn this on or off on each individual email card. And the way you can do this is just click that email card you want to turn it off on, and underneath your settings, you can toggle on or off. Another high-level glance to view of whether or not your smart sending is on is that little green email box with a check mark at the bottom of it. If that's lit up in bright green, it means smart sending is enabled. And so again, that's just a great way to click into the flow and view, okay, is smart sending on, should it be, and do I need to toggle this on or off? So just to recap, things to be mindful of as you build out your flows. The first is your send status. Is your flow sending? Should it be? Flow modes, where do these profiles sit on each individual email cards? Is there something wrong? Is this how I want it? Is this how it should be behaving? Viewing analytics, how is my flow performing at this point? What should I be changing? Everything's going the way I'd like them to go. And lastly is smart sending. Is smart sending on? Is it off? Is that the reason my profiles are being skipped? Just some key areas to be mindful of that I hear most commonly from a lot of my customers that wanted to share with everyone here. So now we've reached the point where we feel you guys are all ready to build a flow together. So if anyone has their laptops, they're welcome to build this out on your own account. Otherwise, we have pens and papers to just draw out the visual flow builder. It's just a few blocks and just label it. But the end goal is an abandoned cart flow that results in two emails. One email should go to people who have never placed an order before, and one email should go to people who have placed an order before. You can get as creative as you'd like, add more time delays, add more filters if you feel confident, but this is the main goal we're trying to get to. So we're going to give everyone probably around 3 to 4 minutes, and then afterwards we'll build it together, and then we'll take some questions, or we can build more flows together if we'd like.
All right, so we're going to hop into the flow builder up here, and we'll actually build this out with you guys, but definitely want your input to figure out what's the best way to do this. So what do we choose as a trigger here for this one? Yep. So you'd use a metric. We want to use an action. Again, abandoned cart is the action of them starting a checkout. So we're going to use that action directly. We're going to use that checkout started event. What comes next after this?
So how would you make sure anyone placed an order after they started the checkout doesn't keep going through this flow?
Trigger filter.
Close?
Close. Flow filter.
Because it's what you know about them.
Yeah. Remember, a trigger filter is only pulling from that specific event, so it'd be pulling information from the checkout started event to say, like, this item was worth X amount or was from this category. A flow filter is going to tell us what they've done in the past, any sort of other behavior that they may have had. Exactly. Yep.
So the next element of a flow, what would we add in? Time delay. Typically for abandoned cart, 2 to 4 hours is fine. Basically, you just want to be near that point of time that person took that action. So you're still the items in that cart are still very relevant to the person that was shopping. And then now we need to get to that end result of 2 emails. One to someone who's never placed an order, and one to someone who has placed an order. How would we do? What do people do? We don't want to remove them from the flow, so what's the other option? It's not a filter. Yeah. You're just changing the journey for these customers. And so here we would say, because we know something about them, we know whether or not they've placed an order before or they haven't, So it's not a trigger split, it would be conditional. And we would say place order. And here you can do either at least once overall time, or you can say 0 times overall time. If you said 0 times overall time, you would just need to make sure that you're aware of like those double negatives for your yes and no paths. So has place order 0 times overall time? Yes. So this would be your first time buyer. Because yes, that's true, they've never placed an order. And then the no path would be someone who's previously purchased from your store. Does that make sense, everyone?
The only thing that I don't fully understand is, so for the checkout started, obviously we want to make sure it's still on the abandoned cart and they haven't purchased. If you say has placed order 0 times over all time, what if they made a purchase like 3 months ago, but they haven't completed this abandoned cart? Would this still work for them, or?
Yeah, because the difference that we set for the flow filter is since starting this flow.
Gotcha.
So that's only going to apply to anyone like anytime after that checkout started.
Gotcha.
Whereas the conditional split is just overall time, any history of that.
That makes perfect sense.
Does anyone have any questions on this, or we can open it up to other questions, or we can build out more flows, however you guys want to use your time.
Now, I understand why you're separating it out, but in terms of people who have ordered before, what would you maybe recommend to send instead of sending?
So it depends on how you'd want to treat them. A lot of times this is just through a discount code. So maybe maybe you value loyal customers more than you do prospects. Sometimes maybe loyal customers need a lower discount code than someone who's a prospect. So maybe you give someone who has already purchased just some free shipping versus someone who has never placed an order with you. They don't know what your products are like. They've never had the opportunity to try them and experience your customer service and the time it takes to ship to them. So maybe you want to give them a little bit more of an incentive to say, hey, we know we're new to you, so we want to say thank you so much for shopping with us, and here's 15% off your first purchase with us because, we want you to get an experience of our brand and who we are.
Yeah, another example is sometimes you may not want to train your customers to abandon their cart. It's like we all buy stuff online. You can figure that out pretty quick. Like, I put it in my cart and I wait 2 hours, I get a discount. So like if I know your brand, like maybe you want to do that for a first-time customer, but for repeat customers, maybe you don't throw a discount in until like emails 2 or 3. So they are not just waiting for that. Because if they're coming to buy from you again, right, they clearly like your product. They're most likely willing to spend full price or something like that. So you could delay that discount a little bit if you wanted to do that to kind of interrupt the pattern of behavior.
That's also very similar to a welcome series too.
Yeah.
So this can be really, really good opportunity to use for welcome series because a lot of times people know that companies offer a discount in that first initial welcome. So the split, whether or not they've purchased before, is a good way to kind of avoid that.
Are there other incentives besides creating discounts that we found are successful motivation?
Sometimes just showcasing the content and the other products that they have. A lot of times it could just be a reminder. So sometimes someone could just abandon their cart and maybe have just forgotten it and got lost and they got a text or they called away at work or something like that. So a lot of times that's a good case to use for like cart value. So if you want to do a trigger split and split it on the value. So you might want to offer someone the discount if they have something over $100 because they've spent the time to add a decent amount of items based on your average product value. If they spent a lot of time adding those items, they know what's in their cart. And maybe they abandoned it because they were a little like, oh God, look at me again. I'm racking up this crazy shopping cart. I need to X out of my browser. So if you were to follow up to that customer, it might be worthwhile to get, at least 90% of that cart value versus you wouldn't have gotten it at all. Versus someone who's under $100, you might want to just send, hey, noticed you abandoned your cart. These are still what's left. Here's a little bit about our brand. We'd love for you to come back. Or, so you don't have to give a discount to everyone. And a lot of customers don't. It just is a good way to kind of distinguish the different messaging to the different type of shopper.
Yeah, and different forms of incentives could be like you could offer like content, right? You could start to really get into like value-based selling with like a welcome series, for example. I know I talked to a lot of customers who are like I don't want to discount my product. And there's just other ways that you can do that, right? Maybe you have a blog that you're sending out, you have really great content, maybe you have particular items that will sell really well over email, or like your best sellers. So really starting to put like some social proof, some testimonials behind that to do more of like value-based selling can be effective as well.
Another one of my customers, and I don't know if they're in the room, but Verity is a Klaviyo customer, and I love their clothes. So I subscribe, and they just opened a store on Newbury, so I shop there all the time. And they send emails. I'm a very average customer. So they send emails just showing pictures of their warehouse and like the care that they put into their products, as well as showcasing it's a family brand. It's two brothers that started it up. So things like that can also kind of create that more personal level. So they pretty rarely offer discounts, but I still will buy their clothes because, you know, I really like their brand and I appreciate what they're doing. So that also can go a long way.
I've also seen a gift with purchase work well, where you can not have to eat into your revenue, but offer something that's relatively low cost that can be valuable. Is there
Yeah, and then we also talk about the experience, and that works for me. Like when I see, I kind of go to as just a regular consumer. I can go to Amazon and get just a static kind of whatever. I know I'm going there for a speech, but when I go to somebody else, it's because of how they talk to me, how their emails are, like what you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Any philosophy about their customer service that makes me feel better.
Yeah. Goes a long way. Also, that's Jody. She's another customer suggestion, I think. So.
Now you mentioned blogs. Now if you have a blog through say WordPress and it's when you go to the blog it's connected to the site but it's not on your site, it's a WordPress based site. Does that take away from potentially getting an order if you're sending them to information on like a blog post on a particular product that they bought? Or excuse me, are going to potentially buy put in their cart? Is that taking away because you're taking them away from your site and sending to your blog?
No, I think what I would do in that sense is I'd do a follow-up email and only send to people that click through, opened or clicked. And I'd send a follow-up email because that I would treat the emails that showcase your blog and things like that, that's like a nurture email. So that shouldn't be trying to get, like, you shouldn't expect high sales from that. Oftentimes you'll get high sales from that, but you shouldn't go into it with the expectation. It should be more of like, I'm using this email to just tell this customer or this recipient more about who this brand is and why we should stay in touch and have a relationship. And then you would probably send a follow-up email that's a little bit more, you know, you would send it to people who expressed interest in your blog and then try to, you know, say, and here are the products that, you know, we think you would love or whatever messaging.
And it also gives people like a reason to engage like outside of like sales and discounts and like kind of the traditional like promotional email. If you get people that are like or if you get them to engage with the content itself, then they're more likely to open emails in the future because they're not feeling like they're being pushed stuff all the time. So that can be valuable, like Mary said, to really nurture that customer, to get more involved with the brand, so that, you know, if you do offer incentive or a promotional email, they become a little bit more effective at the time.
You mentioned that people can get trained to wait for the discount. Is there a way to have like a probability element here? So you say like 30% of the time we don't get the discount, 70% we do.
So you can do that with a conditional split, and you can actually see at the bottom random sample.
Oh, great.
And so you can actually include, you know, whatever number of percentage you want to go through one branch versus the other.
Gotcha.
So this is actually another good use case for win-back flows. So if you don't know what the really appropriate time to try to win back a customer or win back an unengaged subscriber is, you can do half and half. So you can send half people down the path that will wait 30 days, and then the other half down the path that'll wait 60 days. And then essentially you can get a better idea of, you know, what's that better time look like to send a customer an email.
Speaking about the workflow, what do you think is the appropriate time between emails? I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to understand, you know, if you send a welcome email, how many days you should wait until you send the second one, the third? Because, you know, yeah, probably I unsubscribe, you know, like every time for many
Yeah.
companies that send me emails.
So we say for welcome flows, best practice is to only have 3 emails, and to have one be a welcome email, one be a little bit about your brand, and then one be showcasing the products that you have. Or manage preferences. Welcome flow is another opportunity to say, hey, let's get to know each other, and give them the opportunity to fill out some preferences. And so usually I see customers have success with around 2 to 3 days. But it also really depends on, are you also including those new subscribers in your newsletters? So are you hitting them also in another area? And that might get super frustrating. So what can be really beneficial is that custom profile property. And so for a welcome flow, to drag this in and then basically say create new property and say welcome flow, and then value is active. And then once that person passes through this, you can exclude this property from your newsletter list. And so that kind of gives you less of the chance of hitting them way too many times. If you're hitting, one day they get, because smart sending is only 16 hours. So a lot of customers think they turn smart sending on for everything. Well, we're fine. But there's really still a high chance you're going to hit them on a daily basis. And that can get really frustrating, especially if they don't know much about your brand yet, because they signed up and automatically they get a newsletter. So this can be a really great way to kind of separate them out and create a really separate journey from them getting your newsletters, and then kind of, it's an introduction. They're not ready for that regular cadence yet. And so usually I see pretty high success rates with like 2 to 3 days, so that you're kind of giving them a little bit of time to digest. Also, you have to understand, if you're running Facebook advertising as well, that person clicks through, they're getting your brand nonstop for the next 24 hours on every browser that they view. So browser, Instagram, Facebook. So you kind of have to understand they're also going to see your brand in other channels if you're running advertising on other channels. So usually 2 to 3 days gives them that breather from, okay, I'm seeing it all the time on my social. Then the next day maybe you'll just get more of like an email. There's just, maybe give them a day of relief and then send them an email. So it's also, you have to consider where else are they being, confronted with your brand, and is it a good way that they're seeing you? So.
Is there a way to turn on smart sending overall so you don't have to look at every?
No, but by default, smart sending is always on.
Oh.
So every time you drag in a block, smart sending will be applied, and I believe campaigns, it's automatically checked as well.
Yeah, smart sending is defaults on for everything. There's only a couple emails that it won't default on, and that's for the abandoned cart. And this is when you first set it up.
That's
I believe.
only if you use the browse flows IDS. So if
Okay.
you go, we have an area with, actually we should showcase this. There's a button up here called Browse Ideas, and this is our flow library. So if you create an abandoned cart from this library, smart sending will be unchecked, but if you create it from scratch, it will be on by default.
Yeah, anything you drag into a flow will default to on.
But this is a really great tool if you're not sure new flow to build out, or what you should do next. This actually is a really great library that our flows team is constantly adding to, and it just gives some great inspiration of flows that we think are best practice, as well as flows we've seen other customers have success with. So definitely recommend checking this out in your account.
Is the smart send for batch emails as well?
Yeah. And I usually recommend, because I've had customers ask, like, which one should you turn on over the other? Should you do smart sending on your flows or smart sending on your campaigns? And I personally think that smart sending should be on your campaigns, because I always feel like the goal of your campaigns is to drive customers to site, to start triggering those actions that are much more, you can start to email them on a more personal level, versus campaigns you can get as personal as you can with segmenting, of course, but if it's a large newsletter list, I would think you'd weigh that flow message over that general campaign message. So typically, if you're kind of confused, which one should I put smart sending on over the other, I would recommend putting it on campaigns, because anyone that's going through your flow has already been driven to site, probably through a previous campaign, and is going to still be receiving emails from you from your flows.
Yeah, and the flows convert at a significantly higher rate. Like the
Yeah.
revenue per recipient in a flow is like multiples higher than a campaign. So if you just think about it from like a revenue perspective, you're going to make more money on a per recipient basis through that flow email than you are through that campaign email.
Anyone else have any questions? All right. Well,
Awesome.
thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it. we're trying to do this again next year. So any feedback that you guys have in the guidebook app, pop in there, shoot some feedback. If you want to tweet about the session, hashtag Klaviyo BOS, Klaviyo Boston. But I really appreciate it. Glad you guys are all here, and hopefully you learned a bunch.